This is the actual Apollo era mission control room. And you can see the patches of the missions that were flown out of this room. And so you can see the Gemini missions all the way back to Gemini, and then the Apollo missions that were flown through, and also some shuttle missions as well. You can see those badges on the wall. The console positions, we'll see this a very similar layout in the new mission control room when we get downstairs. But the flight director there in the middle is kind of like the quarterback in the room, you know, the person that's kind of literally directing all the others in the room. And what's kind of cool about, you see the different console positions and the spacecraft communicator, which is there to the kind of one tier lower and just to the left of the flight director. We call that person in the new flight control room is called the CAPCOM, which is kind of a holdover from the old acronym capsule communicator. And so the CAPCOM now, when we see the room downstairs, sits to the right of the flight director. So they're kind of the people that, the CAPCOM is the mouthpiece of the flight director and flight control room to and from the crew, so they're hearing one voice. And so and all these console positions here are normally the subsystems in the vehicle that's flying. And so so you'll see those all outlined there, or the dynamic operations of that vehicle. And behind each one of these positions, there's also a room or rooms full of engineers and technicians that are looking at data from the spacecraft, also analyzing trending data and things like that, and feeding information to this front room. And so, of course, all these positions are feeding information to the flight director. The flight director is making decisions for the vehicle, while the CAPCOM, our spacecraft communicator, is talking to the flight director on how to efficiently and with be concise communication and brevity to the crew, so they give the crew just enough information that they can have situational awareness and know what procedures they're going to do to correct like a fault or a situation problem. Failure. So you might remember on this wall over here, there's a patch actually right above the drinking fountain. There's like a little shadow box with a mirror in it, and that is the mirror from Aquarius. On Apollo 13, that failure, of course, happened on the way to the moon, and so they weren't able to do their lunar landing, and so when that harrowing time, I was just a wee little child, so I don't really remember it, but in the movie it kind of captured the essence of what was going on here in Johnson at Johnson Space Center. You know, against all odds, we got that crew back home safely, and on the way back, when the Aquarius lunar lander essentially kept them alive during that good part of that time, and so, but to re-enter, they had to punch that thing off and send it off into oblivion. And so, but the actual capsule they were landing in, the control capsule, they were originally planning to have more than about 200 pounds worth of moon rocks and dust and things like that, lunar soil that they're supposed to bring back. And so, as you can imagine, the people that were in charge of weight and balance and mass distribution in that capsule and calculating re-entry profiles and stuff like that, you know, started to say like, well, we're kind of in no man's land here because we don't have the correct mass or mass distribution. So they instructed the crew to grab everything they could out of Aquarius so they could get an accurate mass and distribute that mass. So they went in and got things that weren't bolted down and some things that were bolted down. And one of those things is that mirror. It's inside of that shadow box. They grabbed that mirror off the wall in Aquarius and then got the right, close enough mass to re-enter. And they punched off Aquarius, came back, and then Jim Lovell and his crew brought back that mirror to Johnson Space Center, to the mission control room, and presented it right here in this room to the control team, and said that it was their gift as a reminder who actually got them back home safely, that when you look in that mirror, the controllers could see themselves, and that the team brought them back safely to the Earth, which is kind of a cool space artifact there. The other is the flag that's hanging up there. That flag has been to the surface of the moon, carried by Gene Cernan. The flag that was flying in this control room during the earlier Apollo missions, Gene Cernan took that flag off the wall and carried this flag and the flag that was flying then to the moon. He planted the one that had flown here, and which is still there on the surface of the moon. This one went to the surface of the moon. Gene said there's lunar dust in it, microscopic lunar dust. He brought it back and presented it to the mission control team as well. So that flag has been to the surface of the moon by the Apollo 17 crew. And there's a little plaque on the wall there that from the Apollo 17 crew. You guys have any questions or anything about mission control? This is the historic mission control, of course. And so you see this carpet, the original carpet, and it doesn't disappoint when you're down there in front. You see all these coffee stains, stains from the cigars. I think that they used to smoke in here.
Hunter said that when the next group comes in,
Okay.
he will buzz us and then we'll.
Okay. Okay. And you see those double doors to the right there. That's the room where we had some simulation, or we had equipment that we can, where they were dumping out on the table in the Apollo 13 movie. It's like, this is what we got, let's figure out how to put the square peg in the round hole. All happened in this room there behind those double doors. So it's kind of cool that, and knowing now how our simulations are, we're going to go to Building 9 after this. We'll walk there after mission control, and that's where our simulators are now, are all of our mock-ups for a lot of our hardware. But back in the Apollo days, some of that was in that side room, which is pretty awesome, because that would have been handy, but of course they don't have the communications that we do now, as far as like instantaneous emails and things like that, obviously. So, and actually, you could see the little tubes. Like you have at the bank, the vacuum tube where you put your message in and send it to a back room or something, with information. So 2 minutes. Okay, we just have a